Whatever happened to diversity? The man who's a woman, the LGBT. You miss your old familiar friends. Back when Whoopi was Karen. Everywhere you look, everywhere it's sunny. It's Whoopi. They're fighting toxic masculinity. Oh, the yentas on The View have been busted again. I know my yentas have been feeling a bit neglected lately. I've noticed that my personal favorite, Asuncion, I've noticed that Sun Hostin has not been as radiant lately. Her radiance has been diminished because she thought Uncle Casey had forgotten about her. I know it's been a while since I've given my masculine attention to the yentas, but I promise you ladies, Uncle KC has not forgotten about you. There's just been so much news lately on men pretending to be ladies, men who aspire to be yentas, that I haven't had the time to focus on the legacy yentas. Back in November, the New York Post released a report that detailed the rising tensions behind the scenes on The View. At the time, ratings for the propaganda princesses and the polished turds they were producing were circling the pooper. Ratings at MSNBC were down 50%. Ratings at CNN were damn near non-existent. The ratings chart at CNN, it was emulating the WNBA. They went from almost nothing to nothing. Executives at ABC were concerned. All of a sudden, they noticed a complete lack of diversity on a show that was supposedly dedicated to diversity. Well, Casey, that doesn't make any sense. The View is a beacon of diversity. Their toxic flatulence is highly diversified. They have the boodle breeze, toxic mouth farts. They have the anonymous blonde who releases silent assassins. The View is more diverse than ESPN. Yeah, well, everything seems to be more diverse than ESPN. If you were to waste your time watching First Take, you don't know if you're watching ESPN or BET. But executives at ABC, they were not concerned about racial diversity. They were more worried about the diversity that actually matters, diversity of thought. Executives noticed that The View was only offering one opinion to their audience of lonely women. The wrong opinion. To make matters worse, the guests that were desperate enough to appear on the show, they were all on the same side. The View was the morning version of late night television. Late night offers a trio of dudes who are obsessed with Orange Man Bad, while The View offers a collection of yentas that are obsessed with the same spray tan. In order to combat the drastic ratings declines that we were seeing on the propaganda networks, executives at ABC, they were promising to diversify The View. Remember a few months ago when there was constant arguing and catfighting between Sun Hostin and the great pretender Alyssa the Farrah Griffin? Remember for a brief period of time when Alyssa the Farrah Griffin appeared to be the voice of reason? She was no longer pretending to be a conservative, or so we thought. She was actually being a conservative. For a brief period, it seemed like the whoopee cushion had taken a break from releasing the boodle breeze. There were serious concerns amongst lonely women that the whoopee cushion had ran out of toxic gas, or even worse, she had tore the ACL in her cranking leg, which left her unable to properly crank her leg to release the toxic breeze. I guess that's what ABC meant when they said they would diversify The View. I was expecting changes. I was expecting one of the ladies to be fired. But I guess the only changes ABC was willing to make was sending the great pretender Alyssa the Farrah Griffin to acting classes so she could improve her performance of pretending to be a conservative, and rationing the toxic gas they were giving the whoopee cushion. Because MRC Newsbusters, they just released a report, and through the first 3 months of 2025, the new and improved View, the so-called politically balanced View, they've invited a grand total of 0 conservative guests on the show. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Link to the second channel is in the description below. This morning on the second channel, we revealed the ratings for the national championship between Houston and Florida. We also discussed the NBA being overshadowed by college basketball and the complete lack of excitement going into the NBA playoffs. So click the link in the description below. Subscribe to the second channel. I'm sure you'll be surprised to know that the Yentas have broken another promise. I know. Shocker. Going into 2025, ABC promised to expose lonely women to a diversity of thinkers. They also promised to expose lonely women to a diversity of boodle breeds. Now, I'm not exactly sure what they meant by that, but I was assuming that the whoopee cushion would no longer be responsible for all the smog. As you guys know, Karen is aging faster than John Biden. Her prime years of producing breeze, they're far behind her. I was assuming that the responsibilities would be divided between the Yentas. Whatever the hell ABC meant by diversity, it's abundantly clear they have not delivered on that promise. From January through the beginning of April, there have been 63 guests on The View. Out of those 63 guests, just take a guess, take a wild guess as to how many of these guests would be appealing to normal people. 0. In their defense, maybe there's a logical explanation for this. Maybe the ladies tried to keep their promise. Perhaps they invited conservatives on the show. It is entirely possible that they sent butt bongo invitations to Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson, since they're obsessed with the Trumper and have absolutely no chance of him agreeing to expose himself to this garbage. Maybe they settled for Eric Trump or Laura Trump. Hell, maybe they sent an invitation to Laura Ingraham, and maybe, just maybe, all of these invitations were returned to Yenta because normal people refused to show up. I mean, that would make sense, right? I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to be exposed to flatulating females. I don't want to be exposed to the lady married to the Pepperidge Farm guy. I think her name's Navarro. I don't want to be exposed to her fake concerns about the children. Anne wasn't worried about the children when Johnny B. Biden was destroying the country, but all of a sudden, Anne Navarro is overly concerned about the children. Watch for yourself.
These billionaires tend to say this. We've seen them quoted saying this, that America, should be able to withstand temporary pain. The problem is people living paycheck to paycheck and trying really hard to make ends meet, the people that are cutting the drugs in half in order to make it to the end of the month, can't endure temporary pain the way a billionaire can do so, right? The problem is that we're already suffering under very high grocery prices. There are children that are going to go hungry because their parents can't afford to pay the higher prices on groceries.
The children! It's all about the children! Oh, shut the hell up! This time last year, struggling parents, they were mixing their cereal with cheap beer because Old Milwaukee was cheaper than milk. They didn't give a shit about it then, but now, I'm supposed to believe you're concerned about the children? It is entirely possible that the ladies invited normal people on The View and their invitations were returned to sender. But for some reason, I just not buying it. I'm thinking they haven't invited conservatives on The View because they haven't had time. And the reason they haven't had time is because they've been too busy giving their platform to Bob Dylan Mulvaney. Bobby D hadn't been in the mainstream in 12, 18 months. Dylan Mulvaney had been forgotten until the ladies invited Bobby D on the show to perform Mr. Tambourine Man. Maybe they haven't had time for conservative guests because they were speaking with Jazz Crockett or Gretchen Whitaker, who I believe is still the governor of Michigan. Or maybe she's like Stacey Abrams and pretending to be the governor of Georgia. Who in the hell knows? The Yentas interviewed Elizabeth Warren and her pretend husband Mufasa, Tammy Duckworth, Eliza Slotkin, Amy Klobuchar. Who, and who? You didn't have time for Sean Hannity, but you had time to interview 3/5 of the starting lineup in the WNBA dump? In the last 3 months, the most politically balanced guest on The View was Uncle Fester John Fetterman. Just think about that for a second. The most sane guest on The View is a dude who refuses to embrace the woke wiener. That is how insane the Democrats have become. Maybe the ladies didn't have time for conservatives because they were interviewing some doofus named Eli Mystall, Eli Your Stall, L Stall. Who cares? It doesn't matter what his name is. When I saw the video initially, I thought it was Don King. Watch for yourself.
Is Trump really setting up a First Amendment showdown, which is what Whoopi's been talking about?
Yes, absolutely. One of my premises for the book is that every law passed before the 1965 Voting Rights Act should be presumptively unconstitutional, right? But because before the 1965 Voting Rights Act, we were functionally an apartheid country. Not everybody who lived here could vote here. So why should I give about some law that some old white man passed in the 1920s?
What a dumbass. Whoever the hell that dude is, he just claimed that every law passed before 1965 should be unconstitutional. If that were the case, it couldn't be unconstitutional because the Constitution would not exist. How does this show still have an audience? How is The View averaging 2.5 million viewers? Are there really that many lonely women in America? I don't know who to blame here. I don't know if we should blame men for not having their shit together so they can attract a woman, or if we should blame women for repulsing potential husbands because their dating bio includes the fact that they're aspiring yentas. What I do know is, everything ABC promised back in November and December was a lie. Clearly, they had no intention on changing The View. Clearly, they had no intention on diversifying the show. These were promises that I think were based on emotion. These were promises based on fear. Once ABC noticed that ratings were not declining, they decided to break their promise. Give me your thoughts on this. The View has a grand total of 0 conservative guests through the first 3 months of the year. Anyone surprised by this? There were rumors going into 2025 that there could be major shakeups with the cast. Initially, I thought that was going to be the case, but now I don't really know. I don't think we're going to see any changes. What about you? Sound off in the comments below. I'll see you guys later.